Hi, this is Brass Check, and this is an addendum to the interview that we did with Dr. Bregan. I volunteered to write something up briefly about some of the things that I discovered about this company, NeuroSigma, but 4 hours later, I hadn't even scratched the surface of all the things that need to be said about this company. So I do have quite a bit of information. I'm not going to attempt to write it down, but I will point it out to everybody who wants to track this story on their own. And maybe there's a reporter out there who's looking for something amazing to do. It's pretty straightforward. So where do we go? Where do we start? Well, this is a company called NeuroSigma, and they've got a product called the Monarch eTNS system. And if anybody knows about the CIA and all their attempts at mind control and brain manipulation, you know that Monarch is a resonant name. I'm not going to get conspiracy theorist on you here, but it definitely is not a neutral name. Anyway, in April of 2019, their product, the eTNS system, was approved with great enthusiasm by the FDA based on practically no tests at all. And what is it approved for? It's approved to treat children 7 through 12 who've received what I call the ever nebulous diagnosis of ADHD. And as we talked about with Dr. Bregan, there is no blood test, there is no brain wave test, there is no medical or metabolic test that shows that somebody has ADHD. Therefore, there is no science that shows how that undefined state can be changed, and there is no way to know when the state has been changed. It's purely a behavioral diagnosis. All right. What about NeuroSigma? These are the guys behind it. NeuroSigma. They're privately owned. They're based in Los Angeles. They are a Delaware incorporated business, and they were founded on March 24th, 2008. And they started as a research company. And luckily for us, they took a stab at a NASDAQ listing back in 2015, but they withdrew their filing on September 25th, 2015. I'm assuming, based on all the stock that's been distributed to all the players, that they definitely want to get back onto the NASDAQ track at some point. But good for us. Here's the deal. When you file an IPO, you got to air all the laundry. And it's all been aired. So if anybody wants to do a really good study on this, just read the IPO filing for NeuroSigma. Here's some of the chief people that I identified. The chairman of the board is a guy named Lodrick Cook, Lodwrick. That's a real name. And his daughter, and we're going to talk about him in a bit, but his daughter is married to a neurosurgeon named Israel Chambi, Chambi. And according to a website called consumerwatchdog.org, as of April 21st, he'd been the subject of over 30 lawsuits and 3 disciplinary actions in the previous 11 years. What's his role in this company? Well, he's a pretty significant funder, as we will see. On November 10th, 2013, he loaned the company $1 million at 12% interest per year. That's pretty good. I'd like to get in on that. That's $120,000 a year in interest. And he was granted a warrant to purchase 30,653 common shares at an exercise price of $8.18 a share. Now that's Wall Street mumbo jumbo, but basically he's not only getting 12%, he's locking in the share price for 30,653 shares, which could be worth money to him, could be worth a lot of money to him someday. On February 28th, 2014, several months later, he loaned the company another $1 million at 12%. and he was given another warrant, slightly different strike price, $8.13, to purchase 30,012 common shares. In 2011, he actually exercised some warrants that were granted to him, and he acquired 36,496 shares of the company stock at $2.74 per share. So Chambi is a neurosurgeon who has a lot of claims against him. What are these claims about? Well, according to an article in the Orange County Register, which was published on May 18th and 2003 and withdrawn, which either means they got it wrong or they didn't want to go to court. I'm going to give some evidence that they didn't get it wrong in a second. But anyway, the article stated that he'd been sued 33 times for claims including performing unnecessary surgeries, repeated medical errors, and lying to patients about their condition or surgical outcome. Now, here's my evidence that possibly this article was a good one. The authors of the article, Bernard Wolfson, William Heisel, and Chris Knapp, K-N-A-P, were nominated the following year for the Pulitzer Prize in the category of explanatory reporting for the series they did on the quality of care at 26 local hospitals. So, you know, getting nominated for Pulitzer Prize is a pretty big deal, and they did for the series. In addition to his proclivity for getting sued, and he's getting sued way out of the range of a normal number of lawsuits for even a neurosurgeon, he was also one of the top financial producers for an organization called Western Medical Center, and he became the chief of neurosurgery there in 1998. And the Western Medical Center was so happy to have him, they took out a full-page ad talking about his expertise. This ad was run in Newsweek, and it talked about his expertise in neurovascular surgery, and we're going to get back to that in a second, or in a bit. The company's total at the IPO filing, the company's total assets before liabilities were valued at $4,118,595. So let's round it down and just call it $4 million. That means of that $4 million asset value, $2 million was contributed by this one investor, the husband of the daughter of Lodrick Cook, who is the firm's chairman. So let's take a look at Lodrick Cook. That's a real tongue twister. It's probably Lodrick. Probably that W, we just ignore it. Lodwrick. At the time of the 2014 filing, Mr. Cook was 85 years old. So he's 90 now. He's got some really interesting distinctions. He's one of those very rare American citizens who, like Bill and Melinda Gates, George H.W. Bush, Ronald Reagan, and Angelina Jolie, has been knighted upon appointment of the Queen of England. How do you like that? Now, what did he do to earn this? Well, apparently he made his contribution to Anglo-American relations. They're a little bit vague on what that contribution was, and his support for philanthropic projects, and they're a little vague on what those are, but it includes giving money to some U.S. universities. It also includes being a trustee for the George Bush Presidential Library and a director of the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library. So this man is connected. Before these great distinctive positions, he was the chairman and CEO of Atlantic Richfield, ARCO, which is the the seventh largest oil company in the United States. So, you know, make of that what you will. He was also co-chairman of the board of directors of Global Crossing. And the other co-chairman was Gary Winnick. If you're very up on Wall Street, super up on Wall Street, you remember the company Drexel Burnham Lambert. Drexel Burnham. And they were involved in a massive financial fraud back in the 80s, and their boss, Michael Milken, went to jail for it. And that fraud involved doing a lot of funny business with bond issues. He was the junk bond king. Now, the head of Drexel Burnham's bond desk, and this would be very much like the general of the operation, maybe he wasn't the 5-star general, but he was a 4-star general, was Gary Winnick. And Rudolph Giuliani, who was then a prosecutor, granted Winnick total immunity from criminal prosecution for testifying against his boss, Michael Milken. And Gary Winnick did, and Michael Milken went to federal prison. So what was wrong with Global Crossing, the company that I don't have all these names at the tip of Mr. Cook. What was wrong with that company? Well, it peaked out with a valuation of $47 billion, but it never had a profitable year, and it declared bankruptcy in 2002, which is actually one of the largest bankruptcies in American history. What was the problem? Well, the executives had been cooking the books. Winnick, and this is a matter of public record, I guess was a very wise man, and several months before it became obvious that the company was a fraudulent sinking ship, sold $730 million in stock that he owned before the company imploded. He got to keep the money. However, the employees of that company lost all the money that was in the company's 401k plan. That's the circles that Mr. Cook, that strange name, Lodrick Cook, travels in. He's on the boards of George Bush's and Ronald Reagan's presidential libraries. He was knighted by the Queen, CEO of Atlantic Richfield, and a big supporter of Gary Winnick. You can look it up. And that's his deal. Now, as of the 2014 IPO filing, Cook owned 30.16% of the company, a really big piece. All right, who's next? Well, we have another guy, the chief medical officer, Ian Cook, MD, not related to Lodrick Cook, according to the IPO. And he doesn't have quite as much of the company as the chairman, but he has, as of the 2014 IPO filing, he had 5.87%, almost 6% of the company. And as of 2014, he had received somewhat over $500,000 in compensation from the company. Now, the footnote about the source of this money is really interesting, and it's financial industry gobbledygook. This amount I'm reading from the IPO now, represents amounts paid to us by the regents as compensation for Dr. Cook's medical-related consulting services during the applicable year. These amounts were funded from proceeds of the NIH grants. For his involvement in our strategic planning and growth initiatives, we paid certain amounts to the regents of the University of California and granted options for Dr. Cook to purchase shares of our company stock. As of June 1st, 2014, we hired Dr. Cook as a full-time employee. As compensation for Dr. Cook's non-medical related consulting services, including his involvement in our strategic planning and growth initiatives. We granted options for Dr. Cook to purchase common stock as further described below. On May 10, 2012, pursuant to the 2010 plan, we granted an option for the purchase of 250,000 shares of our common stock at an exercise price of $2.78 per share, which Dr. Cook secured from UCLA in accordance with its policies regarding non-monetary compensation to faculty for consulting activities. So it looks like the money went from your pocket to the National Institute of Health to the company. It's a maze, to the regents of the state of California, University of California, and then to Dr. Cook. So he's got a big stack of potential shares there. All right. Let me read a little bit more about this income. The company's grant income represents amounts awarded by the NIH under SBTTP, whatever that is, and relates to the reimbursement of research and development expenses that have been incurred. Accordingly, we recognize grant income as the research and development activities occur. We have complied with all stipulations and related regulations, and we are entitled to such reimbursements. Grant income is classified as other income, and the related research and development activities are classified as research and development expenses in the accompanying consolidated statements of operations. We have not experienced any collection issues relating to our grants receivables, and there was no allowance for doubtful receivables as of December 31st, 2012. We have been awarded 3 grants from the NIH under the SBTTP. And I imagine P stands for program. I do not know what the rest of that is. 3 grants came to this amount. In 2013, they got $682,537. Later, they got $746,869. And a little later, they got $618,603 for a total of $2,048,009.09. So if you go back to their net worth, not their net worth, but their assets, which amounted to $4 million, it looks like, and of course, there's a lot more to the balance sheet than this, but this is a company for whom $4 million is a significant amount of money. $2 million came from the neurosurgeon who has a proclivity for getting sued, and $2 million came from the NIH, and these are tax dollars. Now, Dr. Cook, Ian Cook, is supposedly a full-time employee of NeuroSigma, but he's also currently the CEO of BrainCloud.io. And if you really want to understand what's going on here in great depth, I recommend that you go to BrainCloud.io. What are they? It's a company, cloud-based practice management system designed for psychiatrists who address treatment-resistant depression and similar disorders, i.e. the kitchen sink, unlike certain other EMR systems, and now they're throwing some acronyms at us, where psychiatric care is often an afterthought at best. BrainCloud is specifically designed to reflect the workflow in behavioral health and to improve the efficiency with which care is delivered. So in addition to being the Chief Medical Officer for NeuroSigma, Dr. Cook manages to find time to be the CEO of BrainCloud.iu. He also is a longtime employee of UCLA, which makes him an employee of the Regents of the University of California. All right, so now I'm going to cheat a little bit and do this a little bit stream of consciousness, an EMR system. What is it? Oh, I should have known. It's an electronic medical record system. So what they're saying here is, unlike certain other EMR systems where psychiatric care is an afterthought at best, BrainCloud is specifically designed to reflect the workflow in behavioral health and improve the efficiency with which care is delivered. What's some of the care that they're helping to manage? Well, they do traditional medication management. You know, how many drugs do we have this guy on, and how many times a day? And they also are very much in the ketamine business, intranasal ketamine, intravenous ketamine, and intramuscular ketamine. But the one that's of interest to us in particular is TMS, transcranial magnetic stimulation. Now, we talked with Dr. Bregan about this, and that is what NeuroSigma does. They now I'm running out of language here, they transcranially, across the cranium, stimulate using magnetic means. Okay. So let's look at this part of their business. It's a electronic medical record system focused on making the transcranial magnetic. Yeah, and this is why this is going to take me 10 years to write this up, and this is a full-time job for somebody for about a week, just getting the language together. But the TMS is transcranial magnetic. I forgot already what it was. Well, anyway, TMS. Managing, basically, what this system will do is make it easy to manage the application of NeuroSigma's device, which is classified as a E10s device. So this Dr. Hook is very well positioned. Not only is he the medical director of NeuroSigma, he's also got his finger, which is the device maker. He's also got his finger in the pie of this BrainCloud.io, which deals with something called ETNs. I'm sorry, ET. Okay, I'm going to have to do. Well, this is the only way I can do this. I can't sit here and write all this out. I'll be here all day. This is going to have to be a job for somebody else. Trigeminal nerve stimulation. Okay, that's why I didn't know what that was. It's a somewhat newish concept. The trigeminal nerve is not new, but the idea of trigeminal nerve stimulation is a relatively new idea. Let's read this thing. So let's talk about the product a little bit that Dr. Cook is the Chief Medical Officer for. The Monarch, registered trademark, ETNS, registered trademark system, is the first FDA-cleared device for treating pediatric ADHD. The Monarch E-TNS system, E10 system, is indicated for the treatment of pediatric attention deficit hyperactivity disorder as a monotherapy in patients aged 7 through 12 who are not currently taking prescription ADHD medications. Okay, so there are families that have wised up and realized that not only is there no science behind giving children psych meds, these drugs are actually dangerous. So the Monarch, as brought to you by NeuroSigma, is going after that market. And I imagine it's a very big market, potentially, because it's diagnoses, bogus, talk about fake news, fake diagnoses of ADHD are as common as rain in the rainforest. We talked about that with Dr. Bregan. Basically, the normal behavior of childhood, not paying attention, running around, speaking out of turn, are now a mental illness that require medical, read that $, intervention. All right. The device is used for patient treatment by prescription only and is intended to be used in the home under the supervision of a caregiver during periods of sleep. We talked about this a little bit, but basically it's an electrode cap that the child wears. It's hooked up to this machine, and the machine jolts the brain all night long. Somebody else is going to have to write that part of it up, what it actually does, what they say it's supposed to do, and what it actually, the results it actually gets. We talked about the test, the so-called clinical test that lasted a month. 60 kids, 30 got the placebo, 30 got the jolts, the shocks, the gentle shock treatment. So only 30 kids were tested for a month. And of those 30, they managed to produce the following adverse side effects: drowsiness, an increase in appetite, trouble sleeping, teeth clenching, headache, and fatigue. Now, the company doesn't think those are adverse events. They don't think the idea of a 7-year-old clenching, having headaches and insomnia and loss of the ability to control the appetite, drowsiness, fatigue. These aren't considered a serious problem. Please consult the instructions for use for additional information. So that's what the device does. Now, it's probably going to be fairly expensive at first. But if you know anything about the electronics industry, things come out super expensive, and then as you ramp up the number of units, things get really cheap really fast for the manufacturer, not for the end user. And I'm going to guess this is a super simple device. So you'll have one at home. You'll have to buy one. I'm going to guess that out of the goodness of its humanitarian heart, the company is going to appeal to have this covered by insurance. So we could potentially see hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of these units in people's homes, giving kids insomnia, headaches, teeth clenching, fatigue, and the inability to control their appetite. Interesting that on their homepage, they don't even promise any benefit. They just say it's indicated. And some latest news. It's interesting to see where we're going to go from here. But if the company BrainCut.io is designed to do the following. It's designed, treatment with TMS requires tracking a large amount of data about the patients and the treatment system. BrainCloud increases accuracy and reduces risk of error and liability by tailoring the input fields in the software directly to the settings available on the TMS machine. The software keeps a curated list of every FDA-cleared TMS machine, coil, and accessory that can be specified for any TMS treatment session. So, no thinking required. Transcranial magnetic stimulation. No thinking required. And actually, see, a company called Ultra is also in this business. And let me read about them. They are CESULTRA.com. The Ultra is what they call it, is a portable cranial electrotherapy device that employs small currents of electricity in the treatment of stress and stress-related disorders. CES Ultra is an FDA-registered CES device for the treatment of anxiety, depression, and insomnia. A prescription from a licensed healthcare practitioner is required to purchase the CES Ultra kit in the U.S. If you are ordering the CES Ultra from outside the U.S., no prescription is required. You do not need a prescription to buy CES Ultra extra components. And the company, very helpfully, will help you obtain a prescription. It will only cost you $20. And you get that prescription by filling out a questionnaire, and you must submit the form to complete the process. If you do not submit the form, we cannot ship the machine to you. To order the service, please select the button. And the button says, oh, this is fascinating. Yes, I would like to obtain a prescription for the LHP to be provided to me. A separate $20 fee will be charged and will appear on my credit card statement from Help Detox Me, Inc. or Dr. Harold Stecker. So this is a whole other company, CS Ultra. They're FDA registered for the treatment of anxiety, depression, and insomnia. So I imagine this is where NeuroSigma is going to go. Make it super easy for parents to order this thing. And maybe they'll, for $20 you can just get a prescription, get it handled. As long as you send them the money, everything's going to be fine. Okay, that is what Dr. Cook is involved in addition to his involvement with NeuroSigma. Let me read a little bit more about BrainCloud. Just like in a real-world outpatient practice, patients are scheduled to receive a certain number of TMS treatments between date X and date Y. They receive treatments at a physical location, and each is either fully or partially covered by the patient's insurance or paid by the patient out of pocket. Now, could this BrainCloud system be adapted for home treatment so that parents can keep track of what's going on with their device? Will the device be able to read the brain waves of the child, send them back to the brain cloud system, and then the brain cloud system will adapt the level of charge, more charge, less charge? And results. I guess the machine was causing the most. Which TMS machine was causing the most benefit for the patient? So that somehow is going to be reported back to the cloud. And you'll be glad to know that the number of treatment sessions per treatment course can be changed in the middle of that course for any number of reasons. For example, if an insurer grants approval for additional treatments. This brain cloud also, for each TMS treatment session, you can add one or more stimulation parameters. Within a treatment session, TMS coils are used to stimulate different parts of the brain with support for TMS, ITBS, which is intermittent burst stimulation, and CTBS, continuous burst stimulation. Brain cloud is specifically built for tracking which input parameters were used within each treatment session. The date of time of each is recorded so you know which came first, and this is going to help doctors somehow magically take this voodoo medicine and do something useful with it. So it's possible that the parents won't even have ultimately won't even have control over this device. It will be the level of charge, the duration of charge will be handled by the cloud, no doubt by an algorithm. And this will all be done by braincloud.io, which Dr. Cook, who's Chief Medical Officer of NeuroSigma, he's also CEO of braincloud.io. So this is clearly an area for somebody to look into who's got a little bit more medical chops than I do. Then there's a guy named Leon Ekshian, and he is the president, and he's got a whopping big pile of stock too. And I'm sorry to say I don't have those. I didn't take those notes down, but I believe it's significant. I believe it's at the same level of the chairman. And he's been with them since day one, since 2008. And before that, he was president of Arrowhead Research Corporation, which was a publicly traded company that commercializes innovative nanotechnology in the electronic and biotech industries. And that's what this business, NeuroSigma, is, by the way. It is a commercialization of NIH research funded by us, money spent by the regents, it looks like, of the University of California, and specifically UCLA, and all that research somehow became the property of NeuroSigma, and with the help of that surgeon that I mentioned earlier, Israel Chambi, between the money from NIH and Dr. Chambi's loans, that's how this company basically got funded. And Mr. Ekshian is the president. So what else has he done? He was president and chief executive officer of Litex, a company focused on commercializing an advanced automotive emissions control technology. So again, advanced technology, bringing it to market. He was also a business development executive at Lockheed, where he focused on forming new ventures and evaluating new business plans and licensing opportunities. And before that, for 5 years, he was a program manager at Litton Industries, developing ground-based and airborne tracking systems. And he's an MIT grad, in electrical engineering straight through the PhD level, and he also got an MBA from the Anderson School of Management at UCLA. All right. Let's take a look at the news. And fortunately for us, in an attempt to make themselves look like an appealing investment, NeuroSigma has published a lot of news, so we can track how we got to the point where a device that's only been tested on 30 kids, all right, it was a 60-person study, but only 30 kids actually were tested for 1 month, suddenly became an FDA-approved treatment for ADHD for every kid in America. Don't you? I mean, I wish I could be in a business like that. I'll run a test on 30 kids, and then I can just do whatever I want. I mean, what a business. Such a business. All right, so let's look at their very first, of course, and this is only what's on their website. Who knows what went on before. But these are press releases on their website. Non-invasive, this is from 2010. Non-invasive therapy significantly improves depression, UCLA researchers say. Well, when you go to that article, you can't find it. It's on the UCLA alumni paper. All right, about a year later, NeuroSigma's got its investor relations company. Let's see who that is for fun. You know, these companies are, when they try to go public, they're completely transparent when they're trying to raise money. And it looks like that one is not, oops, let's see. Los Angeles, medical-based, established to in-license and develop early-stage technologies with the potential to transform medical practice. CCG Investor Relations, to design and execute its strategic communications and investor relations campaign. And they're going to go into the business of trigeminal nerve stimulation, a proprietary therapy developed at UCLA and exclusively licensed to NeuroSigma. So they've got the patent, they've got the exclusive, well, I think the California Regions probably has the patent, and they've licensed it exclusively to NeuroSigma, which means UCLA will be getting royalty payments for every device manufactured. This is a cash cow of epic proportions. They're also looking into deep brain stimulation. Okay, who are these? Just curious who these CCG people are. They've been in business 30 years, 100 clients, complex investor relations. They're headquartered in LA with additional offices in New York, Beijing, Shanghai, Hong Kong, London, and Tel Aviv. This is a very modern company. Oh, interesting. Their domain name is for sale. Either they went out of business or somebody at the company was asleep at the switch. I'm just going to take a quick look, see if these guys are even in business anymore. 30 years and they're out of business. That's a shame. They were founded in 1972, and they're on LinkedIn. It's one of the nation's leading investor relations companies. They have a Facebook page. Surely you jest. That's all they've got? Let me take a look at that. You want to know everything. You know, you want to leave no stone unturned when you're looking at these guys. Gone. This company does not exist anymore. Well, that's interesting. Not necessarily significant, but it's interesting. All right. Let's go back to NeuroSigma. Let's go back to their press releases. There's some good stuff here. I'm going to get to it soon. I'm going to be a little more discriminating Oh, but I have to say, in 2011, we see a real zinger here. They have coined the term USB port to the brain. I assume you know what a USB port is. If you don't, look it up. I don't know what a USB port to the brain is, but I do see that the first human brain-to-brain interface has been created. And we're going to look up a little bit about that. This is from my website called Extreme Tech. International researchers are reporting they have built the first human-to-human, brain-to-brain interface, allowing two humans separated by the internet to consciously communicate with each other with no additional sensory cues. One researcher attached to a brain-computer interface in India successfully sent words into the brain of another researcher in France who was wearing a computer-to-brain interface. In short, the researchers have created a device that enables telepathy. In the future, rather than vocalizing speech or vainly attempting to vocalize your emotions, your friend, lover, family member might just pluck those words and thoughts right out of your head. This article was written by a fellow named Sebastian Anthony on September 3rd, 2014. Over the last few years, researchers have started to get quite good at reading your brain activity. Commercial brain-computer interfaces that you can plug into your computer's USB port have been around for a good 4 or 5 years now. And the last couple of years, we've seen advanced BCIs that can be implanted directly into your brain. Let's see what an advanced BCI is. Brown University, the first wireless, implantable, rechargeable, long-term brain-computer interface. The wireless BCIs have been implanted in pigs and monkeys for over 13 months without issue, and human subjects are next. This came from 2013, the website Extreme Tech, author Sebastian Anthony. So I guess to certain people that sounds like a sexy idea. And in 2011, long before the article that I just referenced came out, NeuroSigma provides update on trigeminal nerve stimulation, the USB port to the brain. Now, later in the year, they trademarked that, or they put a TM signal. I don't know if they've actually gotten the trademark, but they put a TM. They at least in 2011, they hoped that they would be able to trademark the USB port to the brain. Now, are they talking about this surgical thing? Well, this product is a thing you just wear on your head. But how much of a leap is it to me it's a huge leap, but how much is it a leap for people like this to go from a patch on your head to some cranial surgery? And don't forget, we've got Dr. Let me get his name here, Chambi, who is known to be a very aggressive neurosurgeon and is willing to try all kinds of things as one of their key funders. So don't know that they're going for an actual physical plug into the brain, but they got some people on the staff or involved in this enterprise that have the ability to give it a try. Now, I see something here that starts cropping up in 2011 as well. They're very busy in 2011. Something called a thin film nitinol covered neurovascular stent. So I'm going to look that up right now. Microstructured thin film nitinol for a neurovascular flow diverter. Okay, the thin film nitinol low profile devices for use in vascular repair. And yes, UCLA is all over this. Let's look at their website. Let's see if they actually have the article. They do. Rapid and minimally invasive controls are needed to prevent excessive hemorrhaging from major arteries in wounded soldiers on the battlefield or in civilians appearing in urgent care facilities with significant trauma. Well, nobody can argue with helping those two kinds of people, but sometimes they start with something dramatic and then they try to make it just a regular, outpatient visit. The focus of this research is to develop an ultra-low profile device containing new thin film nitinol to occlude the damaged vessels, preventing excessive blood loss, as well as subsequent repair. Now, if you were to cut a little hole in somebody's head to put a USB port in, literally, and I imagine, well, we know that's being done on laboratory animals, so I can imagine that you've got to do something to deal with the bleeding from that operation. Nitinol is an excellent, biocompatible, so they say, equatomic alloy with many desirable attributes ideal for vascular repair. It is used in stents. It's got a long track record of successful use in the vascular system. And what they're trying to do is come up with this thin film version of it. Patching vascular damage or occluding blood flow. The thin film nitinol also dramatically reduces catheter sizes while presenting an ideal opportunity to develop new ultra-low profile vascular repair devices. So this is something that somebody with a little bit more knowledge of neurosurgery than I have needs to look into, because it looks like they're in a, why, for instance, is their pursuit of this particular line of business related to the E10's machine, or is it a completely separate item? Now, NeuroSigma believes in this a great deal. Later in 2012, they acquired, one of their subsidiaries acquired a patent portfolio of thin film nitinol fabrication, whatever that is. This is for treating intracranial aneurysms. They own a company called NS Vascular, which looks like they've got NS Vascular, and they acquired patents and related trade secrets covering the fabrication of thin film nitinol from the Tinny Alloy Company. Okay, and NSV was formed to commercialize the thin film nitinol stent technology, exclusively licensed from the University of California, LA, UCLA, LA. It's a super elastic nickel and, well, finally we're getting some truth here. It's a nickel and titanium alloy. Okay, now we're getting some really interesting stuff. It's super elastic, and it has unique properties that allow deformation and subsequent recovery of the full shape upon exposure to body heat. So it could be good it could be helpful for aneurysm. The unique properties of this TFN allow for the fabrication of stents that can be compressed and inserted into vessels through very small catheters, a necessity for endovascular technologies being used in the brain. I'm jumping ahead here. They're happy. They're delighted. Flow diverting stents, growth potential in the neurovascular market. We have advantages over everybody else. Okay. Well, I don't know. I don't know where that leads. That is a research project for a neurosurgeon. All right. What else do we have here? They unveiled it in London in 2012. They got this thing patented, the E10s for the treatment of neuropsychiatric disorders. In 2013, they tested it on drug-resistant epilepsy. All right, so as of 2013, nobody's talking anything about ADHD. They're talking about drug-resistant epilepsy. They were given one of these SBIR grants. Let me see if we can get what that acronym is. Slow boat to China here on my internet connection. Okay. Up to 3.6 million. Small Business Innovation Research Grant. And it came from the National Institute of Neurological Disorders and Stroke, which is something under the National Institute of Health. And the testing, let's see, the funding supports development of NeuroSigmas. Okay, implantable. You know, if you just keep digging, you'll eventually get there. This is an implantable subcutaneous trigeminal nerve stimulation system. S10s, not the E10s that they're going to use on, that they can now use on kids. They can use it right now. Right while you listen to this, some kid might be being hooked up to this machine right now, based on a clinical trial of 60 kids, 30 of whom weren't even jolted. And it lasted a month, and they have half a dozen adverse reactions: insomnia, headache, teeth clenching. Who cares? Barely a adverse reaction. I think adverse reaction is like death or something. That is, so misery doesn't count. Remember, these are kids who are ADHD. They run around. They can't sit still. They daydream. That's a symptom of ADHD now, as Dr. Bregan told us. So anyway, implantable, subcutaneous, trigeminal nerve stimulation. And the project builds on the positive results from the randomized control trial of NeuroSigma's non-invasive external TNS, E10s. Okay, so far, it's the external for the kids and the implantable subcutaneous for people with drug-resistant epilepsy. However, together, E10s and S10s offer a complementary platform. I guess this is for the epilepsy patients. Some patients may choose to remain on E10s, whereas others may opt to transition to the S10s. E10s may serve as a means to screen for S10s candidates prior to committing to surgery. Okay, can you see a scenario where the teacher says, little Johnny doesn't sit still? I've just seen a great presentation from a charming representative of this space-age company, and I think we should get you one of these machines for little Johnny. And every night you just put this little cap on his head and flip the switch, and everything's going to be great. And then it's not great. And little Johnny's he's got headaches, he's grinding his teeth, He's got insomnia, fatigue, and he's still running around. But now he's got all those symptoms now that he didn't have before, but he's still running around. So maybe this is when we start talking about the implantable device, and maybe little Johnny needs to have this device on all the time while he's in school, right? Because he'll get this thing as small as I was going to say an iPod, which dates me a little bit, small as a iPhone. Maybe it'll be an iPhone app someday. How great would that be? I'm sure Silicon Valley and Apple would love that. But it will be a small. It can be miniaturized, and we'll have a little wire running behind little Johnny's ear, and it will go straight into his cranium, and it will be managed by BrainCloud IO, conveniently run by the same guy who's the chief medical officer for NeuroSigma. Could you see that happening? I could see that happening. So in 2013, they tried some of this external trigeminal nerve stimulation for the treatment of ADHD. That same year, Health Canada said, we love this thing for drug-resistant epilepsy and major depressive disorder. And of course, that's often how these things are handled. They start out with some really drastic illness, and they get the approval for that because people are desperate. And then they say, oh, well, this is good for the common cold, too. It's good for a hangnail. Positive results reported for phase 1 clinical trial at UCLA for the treatment of ADHD in children using external trigeminal nerve stimulation, paid for with your tax dollars. And let's see, website, it's been debuted. Oh, holy smokes. It's in 2013. This thing's already rocking and rolling in Canada. Let's see what comes up. NeuroSigma will sponsor a satellite symposium at the International Epilepsy Congress in Montreal in June 2013. It'll be the first opportunity for Canadian physicians, epilepsy specialists, and healthcare professionals to see the Monarch ETNS system up close and to learn the latest results from recent clinical trials. And okay, at this point, they're still talking about epilepsy and depression. But in 2013, they were already showing it off in Canada. Okay, all right, what else? They got approval to do a phase 3 trial in 2013. They were allowed to apply, or receipt of notice of allowance of a U.S. patent application. In 2014, they presented at the Epilepsy Science Society meeting. They added some new C-level executives. Got a new general counsel. Oh, they got 2 former executives from Amgen. Good old Amgen. Okay. What is Amgen? It's one of the world's leading biotechnology companies. You'll be happy to know that Amgen is a values-based company, deeply rooted in science and innovation, to transform new ideas and discoveries into medicines for patients with serious illness. And what does Amgen have in its pipeline, just out of curiosity? Can't even follow it. But they got a lot of stuff in phase 1, a few things in phase 2, and a bunch of stuff in phase 3. And this is how investors look at this. Oh, they're in the neuroscience field. They these various drugs and devices have to go through various phases, and as they get positive results from the FDA, the stock becomes, the product gets closer and closer to reality. More importantly, the cash flow gets closer and closer to reality, and the potential value of the stock rises with that. So that's why it's very easy, if you go to any website for a drug company, to eventually find their pipeline, because the pipeline, it's all about the pipeline. All right, so they're in the neuroscience business, and they've got something cooking in phase 3, but it's hard to tell what it is. Anyway, the most important thing is, I think it's pretty clear from who their chairman is and who their chief medical officer is, and now they're stocking up with drug company, FDA, because it's the same business, right? You work for the FDA, you work for a drug company, then you go work for the drug company, and then you work back for the FDA, and back and forth. Same business. And they've got some heavy hitters from Amgen to help steer the ship. All right. Cook joined in 2014. That's the chief medical officer. Now in 2014, they also did a sponsored pediatric clinical trial for a pretty serious disease called Lennox-Gastaut. And they got the U.S. Army involved in 2014, and they want to use the E10 system for, drum roll please, PTSD. And if you weren't aware, there is a huge industry in attempting to treat service people and ex-service people for PTSD, and it looks like NeuroSigma wants to plug the E10, their E10's machine into that money flow. Okay, in 2014, they filed their proposed initial public offering, and boy, am I glad they did that, because you can learn a lot from reading that thing. I gave you some of the highlights. They did some cooperative research and development with the VA in 2014. Mexico is on board in 2014. Their phase 2 clinical trial for depression. Brazil got online 2014. Their phase 2 pediatric clinical trial 2015 for the ADHD. Now here's something really interesting. In 2015, the FDA granted NeuroSigma a humanitarian use device designation from the FDA for its E10's neuromodulation therapy for adjunctive treatment of the symptoms of Lennox-Gastaut syndrome. It's the first step in obtaining a humanitarian device exemption. An approved HDA, humanitarian device exemption, would allow NeuroSigma to market the E10 system in the United States as an adjunctive therapy for the symptoms of Lennox-Gastaut syndrome in children. It's rare. 2,000 children experience it per year. It's catastrophic. It's encephalopathic brain disorder with a childhood onset. And it sounds like, in multiple seizures, it sounds like a really tough disease. It's recognized as a rare disease. And NeuroSigma was working hard as of 2015 to get this special exemption, which I'm not sure what the exemption gets them. Someone would have to research that. But in case you forgot, NeuroSigma is a California-based life science company focused on commercialization of its non-invasive E10s technology for the treatment of neurological and neuropsychiatric disorders. And ADHD, which can be a diagnosis delivered initially by a grammar school teacher, is now treatable by this device. Okay, now we finally, it's kind of hard to find this stuff. You got to piece it together. This thing is small. It's a cell phone sized device. It's a cell phone sized pulse generator, and it has a single patch that is applied to the forehead. This is the external TENS. The signals are transmitted through lead wires to the patch in order to stimulate the trigeminal nerve in the skin of the forehead. Okay, you're asking, and triggering these nerve fibers sends signals to the targeted brain regions, okay, and changes the activity there. Okay, it changes the activity from what to what? And is the new activity a better activity? Is it a healthy activity? I mean, they're being very honest here. It's just going to change. It's going to trigger. It's going to send. It's going to stimulate the trigeminal nerve, and by doing that, it's going to send signals to targeted. We don't know which brain regions. And it's going to do some kind of change. We don't know what kind of change. And they're not telling us because they don't know. Patients may conveniently self-administer the Monarch E10 system at home and typically use the device while sleeping. Typically. See, these things are written by lawyers. So the idea that they're selling us now is you just wear it while you're asleep and you get off and you take it off and you go to school and everything's just fine. The trigeminal nerve is the largest cranial nerve, offering a high bandwidth pathway for signals to enter the brain. It is indeed that thing. And here's where they get into the voodoo science. It directly or indirectly projects to specific areas of the brain which are involved in epilepsy, depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, traumatic brain injury, and other disorders. Functional neuroimaging data suggests that the mechanism of action of TNS is related to its ability to modulate activity in targeted brain regions. I mean, this wouldn't even qualify as a science fair project in high school. It's so vague. But by God, they've got an FDA license to print money for any kid in the United States, 7 to 12, who some idiot diagnoses as having ADHD. Okay, let's see. First double-blind controlled trial in 2019 of TNS shows reduced symptoms in some children with ADHD with minimal risk. This came out of Washington. Currently approved. This is important. So this happened this year, just not long ago at all. Currently approved in Canada and Europe for adults with medication-resistant depression and seizures. Trigeminal nerve stimulation has been found to be an effective and safe means of treatment for children with ADHD, reports a study published in April 2019 by the Journal of the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry. Okay, do we have the article? Because it looks like this is the article that triggered this, okay? Nope, I don't have the article. Somebody's going to have to look it up. It's funny, they don't even give you the name of the article. There's probably a reason for that. Oh my God, I'm reading some of the titles of some of these articles. They are frightening. I'm not even going to read them. That's a whole nother, but they are scary. Well, let me just give you one. Sex, gender differences, and autism, setting the scene for future research. So we're going to combine, anyway. Now, here they're describing the device with a little bit, even yet more precision. TNS utilizes a small stimulator worn on a child's clothes. Okay? And it emits a low-level current powered by a 9-volt battery. Thin wires are connected to the device with an adhesive electrode patch worn across the forehead during sleep. Mild stimulation of the skin, barely or not perceptible to the child, led to activation of deeper brain areas associated with concentration and impulse control. ADHD, and here's the money shot. ADHD is estimated to affect 9.5% of school-aged children, so that's 10%, and 5% of adults. 4.5% of adults. That's 5%, let's say. And that comes conveniently from James McGaugh, who is a professor and child psychiatrist at UCLA, at the Jane and Terry Semel Institute for Neuroscience and Human Behavior. Our current treatments mostly depend on medication with some role for behavioral therapies. Though there is great demand for non-medication ADHD treatments, the most popular options have minimal, if any, scientific evidence supporting their use. Well, we know that there are many, many, many different ways to work with children, and they've been proven over the span of the existence of humanity. But there's no scientific evidence supporting their use, so we'll just get this little machine. So how did the test go? They enrolled 62 kids, ages 8 to 12, randomized them. Some of them got a real machine, some of them got a fake machine, half and half. They ran it for 4 weeks. Benefits in the active group were observed within the first week of treatment, with increasing improvement over the remaining weeks. So they say improvement compared with the sham group was demonstrated by the ADHD rating scale, the study's primary outcome measure. And somebody needs to do a deep dive into what the ADHD rating scale is. And the clinical global impression improvement scale. The size of treatment, it would be comedy if it weren't tragic. The size of treatment improvement was similar to that seen with currently FDA-approved non-stimulant ADHD medications. So it's as good as the useless medications. In addition to reductions in behavioral ADHD symptoms, investigators found positive changes in brain activation with active TNS measured by electroencephalography, EEG. This finding, consistent with NIMH research priorities, emphasize measurable changes in neurological function in addition to behavioral improvement, suggesting that TNS has beneficial effects by increasing brain activity in brain circuits that modulate hyperactivity and impulsivity. Might be effective in reducing anxiety as well. So, the article is double-blind, sham-controlled pilot study of trigeminal nerve stimulation, TNS for ADHD by James McGaugh, and that's the lead guy on it. And it appeared a lot of doctors on. Oh, Mr. Cook's on this one. Dr. Cook's on it. Are you surprised? It appears in the Journal of the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry. And the research was funded by you guys, U.S. National Institute of Mental Health. Conveniently, the NeuroSigma, maker of the Monarch external trigeminal nerve stimulation system used in the study, provided additional material support for the research. Well, that was very, very good of them. Very good of them indeed. All right. And right after that came out, NeuroSigma announces FDA clearance of Monarch E10 system for the first non-drug treatment for pediatric ADHD. The first. Talking with children, giving them a chance to play outdoors, finding things that are of interest to them and giving them an opportunity to do those things, not being in a toxic environment all day. None of those things are worth trying, but by God, this cigarette-sized electronic device, that's the first time anybody's ever tried a non-drug treatment for pediatric ADHD. And NeuroSigma, just recently, just a couple of days ago, we're hot on the trail here. June 26, NeuroSigma announced its presentation of clinical trial data showing increased brain activity and improved cognition in children with ADHD treated with E10s. So this thing's been approved. It's all over but for the marketing. And I predict a big market, a big market for this thing. And I'm going to look for the FDA press release because that's pretty interesting. Neuro. So there was some interesting language in that, and there's one last guy we need to mention by name. There we go. It's a press announcement. For immediate release, April 19th, 2019, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration today permitted marketing of the first medical device. This is accurate. They're telling you it's a medical device to treat attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD. The prescription-only device called the Monarch External Trigeminal Nerve Stimulation E10 system is indicated for patients 7 to 12 who are not currently taking prescription ADHD medication and is the first non-drug treatment for ADHD granted marketing authorization by the FDA. This new device offers a safe, non-drug option for treatment of ADHD in pediatric patients through the use of mild nerve stimulation, a first of its kind. And that comes straight from Carlos Peña, who is the director of the Division of Neurological and Physical Medicine Devices at the FDA's Center for Devices and Radiological Health. Today's action reflects our deep commitment to working with device manufacturers, I bet, to advance the development of pediatric medical devices so that children have access. This is what it's all about, folks. We want to have children have access to innovative, it's definitely that, safe, not so clear, effective, definitely not clear, medical devices that meet their unique needs. The press release goes on to tell us how common ADHD is. It begins in childhood, and the symptoms, they're really unusual. Difficulty staying focused and paying attention, difficulty controlling behavior, and very high levels of activity. It's intended to be used in the home under the supervision of a caregiver. Well, the exact, and this is beautiful, we got a little truth here, because they have to say something true somewhere so that when this thing turns out to be a disaster, they can say, we told you. While the exact mechanism of E10s is not yet known, ... The stimulation should feel like a tingling sensation on the skin. It should be used at home under the supervision of a caregiver during periods of sleep. It might take 4 weeks, a month, for a response to become evident, and then go back to the doctor and get assessed. The most common side effects we talked about before, just drowsiness and increased in appetite, trouble sleeping. You don't think sending random electric patterns into the brain might impact the appetite regulation areas of the brain, do you? And the trouble sleeping, you don't think sending electricity into somebody's brain while they're trying to sleep might keep them up? I mean, is that a possibility? Headache? I don't think I'd like my head to be pounded with electrical signals, mild or strong, all night long. I think I'd probably get a headache. And if you're not sleeping, you're probably going to be tired and drowsy the next day. But, you know, they're holding the line, should not be used. Children under 7 should not be used near MRI machines. Wow, this is really interesting. It should not be used in the presence of radio frequency energy, such as magnetic resonance imaging, because it has not been tested in an MRI machine or cell phones, because the phone's low level of electromagnetic energy may interrupt the therapy. The FDA reviewed the Monarch E10 system through the de novo pre-market review pathway, a regulatory pathway for low to moderate risk devices of a new type. This action creates a new regulatory classification, which means that subsequent devices of the same type with the same intended use may go through the FDA's 510K pre-market process, whereby devices can obtain marketing authorization by demonstrating substantial equivalence to a predicate device. Now, they've changed this press release. And I unfortunately did not copy the original version of it, but there was some other language in here that was really loopy and really exuberant and very easy to call bullshit on, but that language is gone. If I ever find that earlier press release, I'll update. But basically, just to recap, this company has, as its chairman, a guy who is clearly a power player. It's funded by a neurosurgeon who is an exuberant neurosurgeon and attracts way more than his share of lawsuits. Its chief medical officer is also involved in another company that could easily hook into this device, allowing it to be controlled remotely. They started out it was sort of a typical bait and switch. They said it was going to be for a serious, untreatable epileptic disease, and then all of a sudden now it's good for ADHD, which they say affects 10%, nearly 10% of all children. Carlos Pena. He is the guy that signed off on this. Let's see where he worked for. Prior to what he's doing now, Dr. Pena is involved in all aspects of the safety and effectiveness review of neurostimulation, neurodiagnostic, neurosurgical, neurotherapeutic, and physical medicine devices. He also serves as principal investigator on an FDA-sponsored clinical study focused on the treatment of pediatric neurological disorders. Prior to joining what he's doing now, he served on detail as Assistant Director of Emerging Technologies for the Office of Science and Technology Policy in the Executive Office of the President of the United States. His expertise included science, technology, policy analysis, and regulatory matters related to biology, neuroscience, biotechnology, emerging technologies, agriculture, and STEM education, a real polymath. He got his neuroscience doctorate at Case Western. He went to the University of Connecticut for his master's in comparative physiology and City College, where he got his bachelor's in developmental biology. But we don't know when, where, or how all these things came to be. Anyway, that's the story here. This is taxpayer research given to the regents of the University of California, specifically UCLA, and then the research is being licensed by this company, NeuroSigma, and you've got at least one UCLA neuroscientist, a very prominent one, in a very important position, working for NeuroSigma. Their R&D has been funded by the National Institute of Health, and then we have a very active and exuberant neurosurgeon who is one of their chief funders. And that's the story of NeuroSigma, and it's interesting. It's interesting, to say the least.